Hey guys, welcome back to another TEKDEP PC build video. In today's edition, we're going to be building a workstation that's going to be used for data recovery. If you guys have any questions or any comments, leave them in the comments below. If you're looking for a very similar unit for your home or business, click the link below and we'll get one built for you. So let's go ahead and get into it. So of course, we're going to start with the motherboard. We're going to go ahead and take it out, as well as all the accessories we'll be using for this build today. Alright, so the very first thing we're going to do is go ahead and open up our processor and get it ready for installation. We're going to go ahead and open up and release the ILM by pulling it backwards. One quick point to notice is there's a little triangle on the left hand side down here. See if I can get that noticeable on camera. There it is. That we're going to go ahead and line up the triangle on the processor with. So as you can see, there's a little triangle right down here that we're going to line up with the socket triangle, as well as the one on the ILM cover. Drop it into place, give it a little wiggle just to make sure. Close the socket, and as you close it, this little socket cover will hopefully come off. It's supposed to come off, there we go. Keep that in the motherboard in case you need to return or RMA the motherboard. They do have the right to deny it if you don't have this socket cover reinstalled when you return the motherboard, so keep that handy. Alright, so the next thing we're going to install is going to be our boot drive. This is going to be a 512 gig Samsung drive here. So we're going to go ahead and slot it in. There we are. Open up the M.2 securing screw and secure it into place. So next we're going to be unboxing and installing our 32 gigs of DDR4 3200 megahertz CL16 RAM. Just to give you a brief overview of the parts list here, obviously this is a ASRock B760M ITX motherboard that uses DDR4. This is going to be a Core i5 3400 and a Samsung boot SSD. And we're going to go ahead and prep the DIMM slots here by just popping open the two clips. And you're going to install the RAM by lining up the two notches like so and clicking it in. So you hear a click on both sides. If you're not sure, you can always push afterwards. Just make sure there's no side to side force, it's just straight down. And repeat the same process for the other RAM stick. Alright, and next we're going to go ahead and install the CPU cooler. Since this is going to be in a small form factor case, we went ahead and went with a 45mm low profile cooler from ID Cooling. This should be more than enough for this i5 13400. It's not exactly a super hot chip, so this cooler should be more than sufficient. Alright, so opening up our hardware box here, I'm going to go ahead and take out the package marked Intel, as you can see here. There's also an AMD one in there. Obviously we're not using an AMD socket, so we will not need that hardware. Alright, so the way this cooler actually is installed is we install the hardware here, put the cooler on, flip the board over, and then secure the cooler to the back of the board. So we're going to take the brackets marked LGA 1700 because this is a 1700 processor. We're going to line them up like so. And tighten them down all the way just to make sure nothing comes loose. We have equal and even mounting pressure. Then we're going to go ahead and take our thermal paste, if I can get it open. Install our thermal paste. So this is quite a big chip, as all 1700s are. And given it is a small form factor case with a small cooler, even though it's only an i5 13400, this is what I found to be so far the optimal application of thermal paste. Is just a long line down the center with two dots on either side. Some people do dots on either corner. Whatever works best for you, whatever you find works best. It's completely a personal decision. So of course, make sure you peel this off before you install the cooler, or else your temperatures will be somewhere in the hundreds. And we're gonna go ahead and install it with the heat pipes facing down. And now I just have to hold it in place and flip the board over. Make sure I line everything up. So now we're going to take these bigger screws and screw them in. All right, and that is our cooler installed. This is our CPU fan cable, which I'm going to run underneath and across. All right, there we are. And we're going to plug it into the fan header, labeled CPU fan header, which is going to be the far right one. And then we're going to go ahead and tuck this wire back under here just to hide it, keep it out of the way of everything else. Alright, so now that the board's fully assembled, we can set it aside and move on to the case. Alright, so let's go ahead and get our case open here. And our hardware out. Alright, so as you can see, we already have a pre-installed 300 watt power supply that we're going to be using for today's build. Since there's going to be no graphics card in here, there's no real need to go with anything higher. This is more than enough to get us through what we're doing. Alright, so we're going to separate out the cables we're going to be using. The CPU 8-pin EPS cable, as well as one SATA cable. So the rest of these, this Molex connector can go up here and out of the way for now. Let's go ahead and get this fan connector untangled. Alright, so as you can see down here, we have the front panel connectors, as well as our power connectors and an extra fan header. So what I'm going to do is open up our hardware first here, grab out the screws that hold in the motherboard, get those ready to go. Alright, so the very first thing we're going to have to do is actually bend everything out of the way to get the motherboard in here. And we're going to take our I/O shield, line it up and pop it in. If you're ever unsure if it's upside down or not, go ahead and put it on the back of your motherboard just to double check that that's the top, that's the bottom. Actually reverse, that's the bottom, that's the top. And then you can click it into place and be sure that it's not going to be installed upside down or backwards or anything like that. Alright, so that's our I/O shield installed. And now we are ready to start installing the motherboard. So we're going to come in and line it up with the standoffs as well as our rear I/O panel here. There we are, so everything lines up just like so. And we're going to take our Phillips head screwdriver and screw it into place. And that's our motherboard installed. Now we do have a bunch of wiring to do, starting with the front panel. There's going to be a panel down here labeled JPF1, which all these connectors are going to go on. They're all labeled as well. The easiest way to do this is to check your motherboard manual and line up the pins from the case with the pins on your motherboard. Alright, so that's our front panel lined up and installed. Now we're going to have an HD audio connector as well as a USB front panel. The USB front panel is actually going to go right here. There's going to be a dead pin on this connector, along with the dead pin on the actual motherboard. You can line that up and slot it in. And HD audio is going to be in the rear back here. Same thing. There's a dead pin on the motherboard as well as on the connector. There we are. So that's our front panel all wired up and ready to go. I'm just going to go ahead and plug in this fan header to a fan header on our motherboard. Alright, so that's that fan header installed. I'm just going to rewrap this cable up and put it back on this side of the fan. Alright, so before we install any other cables, we're going to go ahead and do our CPU 8-pin. As you can see, it's right here next to the CPU cooler. Alright, so that that's installed, I'm just going to push this down and out of the way. And before we plug in the 24-pin, we're actually going to install our two 3.5-inch hard drives in the front here. Let me grab those. So for hard drives, we went with two 4.5-inch Western Digital NASware 3.0 drives. These are actually going to be running in RAID. That way, in case we lose any data, we have another copy. So I'm going to slot this drive down and into place here. Alright, so now that we have everything installed, besides the motherboard 24-pin, which I'm going to install right now. Alright, so we're going to install our first 3.5-inch drive by sliding it in just like this. Alright, and then we're going to go ahead and install the second one. We're going to actually install it in the 5.25-inch bay, normally where DVD drives go. Alright, so now that we've got both drives installed, we're going to go ahead and open up our SATA data cables and pre-run these before we go any further. And now we're going to go ahead and plug in our SATA power cables. So we're definitely going to need to get a different SATA cable for this drive here. So I will go swap this 90-degree one out for a different one, and I'll be right back. Alright, so after swapping out that SATA cable that had a 90-degree turn or bend for a regular SATA cable, everything should line up perfectly. There we are. Okay, so now we can go ahead and try to cable manage this a little bit better. This is going to be a workstation PC, so we're going to be in and out of this a couple times a month, probably just test parts, swap parts, or put additional drives in for data. So we're not going to worry too much about making this look super professional. Alright, so that's the build complete. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and make sure everything turns on. Alright, so we gave it power. Let's go ahead and hit the power button. I believe the power supply is on. And there we go. Everything's coming to life. Alrighty, so that was today's TEKDEP build on a server/workstation PC. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave it in the comments below, and with the help of the community, we'll make sure to assist you. If you saw any parts or tools you need in the video, check us out at TEKDEP.com or click the link below for mail-in repairs and PC builds like this. We'll see you guys in the next episode.